This panel is part of the Alliance Theater Atlanta Writers Lab think tank projects. The Writers Lab is a group of 4 writers who've come together. They meet once a month to talk about their projects. And one criteria for being in the lab is to do something that will give people at the Art Center a greater appreciation of their work. And today we are talking about the work of Koltes and 7 Stages' amazing 10-year commitment to translate and produce all of this amazing French writers' work. My name is Lisa Kalki. I'm the Artistic Associate and Dramaturg at the Alliance Theater. And I just want to thank the High Museum for giving us this amazing space, everyone at 7 Stages for doing this amazing, amazing project and bringing it to Atlanta, and all the many organizations who helped us get the word out. So I'm just going to quick introduce the panelists, and I think it'll be kind of free form and very casual, and if you have any questions, just raise your hand, and we'll just let them talk informally about the project. So first of all, I have our lab member, Isma'il Ibn Conner, who is the translator for all of these plays, and I'll let you find out more from him. Del Hamilton, who's the co-founder of 7 Stages on the very left, and then the director of their current production, In the Solitude of the Cotton Fields, Eric Vigner, in the middle. And with that introduction, I will turn it over to them. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Celise. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the US Koltes Project, and then Isma'il is going to speak a little bit about what it's like from his perspective as a translator and one of the actors in the current production. And then Eric will speak a little bit about his understanding of Koltes and maybe about this play. And a slight caveat about everything all of us say. Because we are so deeply immersed right now in the language of this really dynamic and vital writer, that's pretty much what's in the 3 heads that you see in front of you. And so formulating ideas and questions may come with some difficulty today. So for that reason, our remarks are rather brief, and we hope that you'll have some questions, and it will be a formal and a formal, friendly exchange of thoughts and ideas. But 7 Stages started in 1979, and somewhere around the early 80s, we were invited by the German government to go and study the German language. And so of the artists at 7 Stages at that time, myself and Faye Allen, who we were both co-founders of the organization, and Faye is here tonight, we went to Rothenburg Ode Tauber. And this is a small medieval village, really, in the middle of Germany. And we studied the language and then for a couple of weeks toured around the various cities in Germany to learn about German theater. And so we came back with a number of projects in our back pocket and a number of people that we met. And that's where we got the idea that we really needed to meet more people around the world, and that this could be interesting for a number of reasons. One, that training for theater professionals in our country is limited to academic arrangements, largely. And so this was an opportunity to bring a real professional experience from another culture into our community of Atlanta over the long term. And so we kind of got involved with the idea of international theater from that perspective because of our first visit to Germany. And then fast forward a number of years after we have produced a number of German plays and had teams of artists from Germany, and the cultural attaché of the French consul here in Atlanta, Cécile Perronnet, whom some of you may know, stood in our lobby and said, well, this was a wonderful German play, but what about my country, the French? And so we said, well, yes, as a matter of fact, when we were in Germany with some friends, we asked them, who is the most important writer in France at this time? And this was about the middle 1980s. And without question, these were, one was the editor of a famous magazine in Germany, and the other a translator of German plays. And they both said, without thinking, Bernard-Marie Koltes. And so, of course, we didn't hear of him. Not only are we Americans, but in America there's this particular problem that that name is unknown. But we called him on the telephone and said, we'd like to meet you and talk about your plays. And like many of our French friends, he was unsure about his English, but we managed to speak, and so we drove from Berlin to Paris for our first meeting with this important person. However, at the time when we got to Paris 2 days later, he was ill, and at the time, as we now know, he was dying of AIDS, which he did in 1989. So we weren't able to meet directly with him, but Faye and I had conversations from the Montana Hotel in Paris, talking to him about art and literature and what was wrong in the streets of Paris. I remember that conversation. More on that later. And we had this particular play in mind that we liked called Black Battles with Dogs. And this was a play that was done in New York once, but not any other time in America. And so we came back determined to try to find translations of Koltes. And we did locate a translation of this play. It was done by 2 British academics, and it sounded that way. And so, fast forward again 3 or 4 more years, and we went to, at the invitation of the French government, to Avignon, where there's a famous international theater festival. Some of you may have heard of the Festival d'Avignon. And so our goal there was to interview 5 theater directors, and we would select one of those to come back and direct our first Koltes play. So these were we specified to our hosts the kind of director we were looking for: young, energetic, hopefully a woman, that had a particular perspective about contemporary theater and politics, and particularly who would understand our mission statement, which is that we do, 7 Stages does plays which have a social, political, or spiritual content. So we were interested in finding playwrights who were willing to have a conversation just about that subject. Why is it important to discuss with the artistic team of a theater the content of your play, rather than, for example, how much it's worth as a property and don't you want to invest in it? So, so we interviewed the 5 directors, and we happily were overwhelmed because they were all really exceptional people. And what we found out was that they all had a particular story to tell about how working on Koltes had changed their lives. I thought this was pretty incredible to hear, especially from directors who can tend to be somewhat cynical. And they were talking about how they would have these, I don't want to call them epiphanies, but I can't think of a better word, but during rehearsals, these moments of inspiration. And it was these moments that caused them to have an appreciation of the text of Koltes that one doesn't get from many other opportunities to read text, for example. But we selected one, Arthur Nosicil, and we had an open book with Arthur. We said, we don't know which Koltes play, but you are an expert in Koltes, so between us, let's figure out how to do this. And so he said, well, the first thing is to come to Atlanta and let me get my sense of the community and find out what it's about. And so he came here for a visit, and we took him around and introduced him to the various sites and locations. And he suggested that we do a play called Black Battles with Dogs. And so the synchronicity of this, because, of course, this is the play that we wanted to do, his choice was the same as that. He felt that it was really an appropriate play for Atlanta. So briefly, the story of Black Battles with Dogs, if a story is important, is that it takes place in Western Africa at a construction site where a Western bridge building company has been building a bridge, but now the construction is to end, and so the bridge will not be completed. So it's a bridge to nowhere. It's a bridge from colonialism to developing Africa, from the west to the east, etc. But also, so the story goes, one of the workers has killed one of the white workers has killed one of the village men, and his brother, the village man's brother, has come to the construction site to claim the body. The body can't be gotten because the murderer threw him in the sewer. So there are a lot of narrative elements that go along with that, but I just wanted to give you an idea that Mr. Koltes can spin a yarn, and he has a good understanding of storytelling and narrative, even though perhaps what is most appealing about him is not his narrative ability, but his nonlinear, non-structured approach to language and text, which we'll be talking about, I'm sure, before we're done today. So we did the production of Black Battles with Dogs. It was, by our standards, 7 Stages standards, and by Atlanta's standards, a success. And we also were fortunate that our tour was able to organize a small tour in France where we took our production in English with French subtitles. And in every location where it played, it was a huge success with all the seats full and really very wonderful reviews. And along this path of Black Battles with Dogs is when we were able to meet with Eric Vigner for the first time. As it turned out, our tour, our director for Black Battles with Dogs, he was also an associate director at Eric's Theater in Lorient, which is in Bretagne, somewhat a part of France, but also with its own particular identity, Bretagne. And so Eric's Theater was one of the places where we were able to perform Black Battles with Dogs. And Eric was able to see both Isma'il and myself, because we were actors in the play, during that production. So that was in 2002 or so. And so here we are 6 years later. Eric is directing this production with the two of us, and Isma'il is the translator of the production. So I think my last remarks are about the US Koltes Project. I unfortunately had to withdraw as an actor from the touring production because it still is touring, as a matter of fact. And in May, I think there's a performance in France, and Isma'il is still one of the actors in that performance. And it's been very successful in that there continue to be venues in France that want to invite it. And it seems to be a unique way of looking at this particular French playwright. So he's a playwright who had a fascination with the United States, and especially with Western films, cowboys and such. And he saw it, in my view, in a kind of an iconic sort of way. And he incorporated his appreciation for Western popular culture like that into his thinking and in his plays as well. And Isma'il, because he's been traveling with Black Battles with Dogs, has been able to form a friendship with the brother of the playwright, Francois Koltes, who lives in Paris, and he also is the one who controls the rights for all of the Koltes plays. So he's the one that people go to get permission to do Koltes from all around the world. And interestingly, Koltes is very famous around the world, but not in the United States. And so that's one of the main reasons why we wanted to start the US Koltes Project. I should mention that there's a group of translators in New York, and in 2003, there was a festival in New York called Koltes New York, I believe, something like that. Very imaginative, bureaucratic title. And it was at the Ohio Theater in the Village, and a group of translators each picked a play of Koltes and made a new translation, and they did it as a sort of an advanced stage reading. And I think there were 1 or 2 productions. So after this festival, they asked for permission to have their productions be done in other theaters. But the estate of Mr. Koltes said no, because we have a translator now who we're making all the plays into English, and it's his plays that are authorized and not any other. So we're in the middle of a big national controversy right now because of all this. These are friends of ours in New York, these translators, who understandably want to get their plays done at Yale and at theaters that would appreciate Koltes, because there are only a handful of them in the country right now. But we think that our process merits a special appreciation and attention, and that's why we have initiated the Koltes Project, because we want to create an awareness in the country of this writer, and we want to create new translations of his plays that sound like American English, and finally, that have benefited from a production process. So it's not that a translator sitting alone in the room with a dictionary making sure that it's not either verbatim or not totally inaccurate, but this is a translator from an actor's perspective who presents a translation to an artistic team led by a director, and then this team works on the text during rehearsals, and then finally, when the play gets mounted and is over, we have the completed translation. So the text is informed by the production process. And that's what makes the US Koltes Project somewhat unique, because we require that the translation go through these steps in order to be finally complete. And that's why the owner of the rights feels that he can withhold the enthusiasm of other translators in favor of what Isma'il ends up with as a result of our work here. So it means that every other year we'll have a premiere of a Koltes play at 7 stages. And then in the off years, we will be developing the translation for the next production. And then the last component I'll mention is that as we're developing these translations, we hope to visit universities around the country where we'll be in residence with our team of artists from France and the US, and Isma'il, and actors from the universities can participate. And we'll spend 1 to 3 weeks there developing the translation and getting it ready for the first rehearsals at 7 stages. This additional development stage, it creates the opportunity for Isma'il to collaborate with a group of people who don't have a particular financial interest in this, or artistic or spiritual interest, but have a kind of an academic intellectual urge to approach the project. And so the Mellon Foundation in wherever they are, New York, I guess, the Mellon Foundation has expressed their idea to support this aspect of the project. So we can go to a university now and say, we have all of the cost covered, and all you need to do is put us up for a few weeks and provide a space to work. And so it's a nice deal. I know it's a nice deal because we've been working on 2 years to try to persuade universities to let us come onto their campus. And what we get from the theater departments is, well, we don't know anything about Koltes. None of us are trained in Koltes. We're all very busy with what we're doing, and therefore we're not interested. And what we get from the French department is, well, we've heard of Koltes, and it would be interesting, but it's a translation process and not directly interested to teaching, related to teaching grammar and such matters as that in our courses. So, and then of course when we get to the content departments, like the politics department who want to talk about colonialism, or the creative writing departments who want to talk about the poetry of the language, etc., etc., it's a very cumbersome, difficult process. And what's in the back of the minds of all the university people is, this is going to cost me time and money, and I don't know, I've got my own projects to develop. And so that all gets erased now, and we get to go to these wonderful people and treat them with great respect and say, we really want you to participate in this, and we can prove it by putting the money on the table. So the US Koltes Project is imagined to be 10 years long, and it begins on April 26th, 2008, which is the premiere of this play that's being directed by this wonderful man here, Vigner. I'm trying to be concise, and I hope I have been. It's my really great pleasure to introduce my colleague Isma'il Ibn Conner. who is the translator for this particular play, In the Solitude of Cotton Fields. And he's going to tell you a little about his perspective of Koltes language, and maybe there will be some amusing stories along the way. If not, I'll ask questions at least that will elicit some sort of humor from him.
Yes.
Isma'il?
Yes. You know, I think this project, the US Koltes Project, started with, as Del said, when he spoke with Bernard-Marie himself. But I think it began for me here at the Alliance in 2006 at the TCG conference. And there was a breakout session about the individual artist and the individual artist relationship to the institution. And Del was one of the lecturers in this program. But it really got me thinking to well, what can I do? And at this time, I had started working on Solitude, not translating, but I was working with someone else's translation, and me and another colleague of mine, and we were working on In the Solitude of Cotton Fields, this translation. But it got me thinking. It was like, well, what if I translate? What if I bring inspiration to an artistic institution? And it's like, and how does this change the relationship or the model of how theater is done in a way in America, how we approach it? Because the normal model is that the artistic institution provides the inspiration and the product for the artist, and then the artist comes in and they're plugged in. And so through this panel, thankfully, it's like that gave me the courage to start thinking about translating In the Solitude of Cotton Fields myself. So when we were performing at Festival d'Avignon in 2006, we were in a break between Festival d'Avignon and performing at the Hellenic Festival in Greece. And while I was in Paris during that time, I went to Francois Koltes, whom I had met in 2001, whom I had met in 2002 at Eric's Theater in Brittany, the CDDB Lorient. And Francois said something, and I can't divulge it, but he said something very inspirational to me that made me have some personal attachment to Koltes. So I went to Francois in 2006, and we sat in a cafe very late at night, and I humbly asked him if I could translate Solitude. Francois said yes, that he gave me his blessings, but he said, don't just do that, do everything. I'm looking for someone that I trust, someone who has a more fleshed out concept about how they want to approach the work, how they want to translate it, instead of just translating and publishing. So I foolishly said, yes, I could do that. And, you know, I most certainly have not mastered French by any stretch of the imagination. But I accepted it, and it came back, and Del and I fleshed the project out more. And so when we thought about the director, the first person came to mind was this gentleman next to me, Eric Vigner. Just like this, he'd be the perfect, he's the only person to do this. But what I've learned in this translation process and having us to refine the translation, even as we work on it with Eric and Cyril, and as we sit around the table and we work on the project, is that it isn't even necessary in a way that one be. Let me put it this way: it's not all that it takes is to be fluent in French. I've worked with French people who are obviously fluent in French, who, in my opinion, have produced wrong translations. And I was doing, I think, in a way, exactly what I think these wrong translators were doing. Were there becomes a need to correct Koltes so that it makes sense to us in English. And but his language is something else. Koltes has done something singular, something unique. it's beautiful. And so sitting at the table, working with Eric and working with Del, and as we sit around and work on the translation, it really becomes apparent to me. It's like, well, then I have to trust myself, and I have to trust that Francois has said that has allowed me to do this, for better or for worse. But yeah, I mean, the Koltes Project, is, those of you who know me, is it's something personal. And being a translator is weird sometimes because sitting in the rehearsal, it's weird sometimes because I have so many versions of the play in my mind, so many versions of the translation, and this good man, fortunately, has patience with me, and it's Eric's approach to the text is something I'm not accustomed to, but it's really calling for the actor to be present. And I know we give a lip service to that a great deal as actors and directors and so on and so forth. But to really call us to be present, to be now, to really do a thing instead of to pretend to do a thing. And it's something that's weird because in my estimation, in our American existence, we don't live a present existence. We're all over the place. We're doing many things. We have many things to do, and we're texting, and we're on the computer, and we're, hey, don't mess with that, to the kid. And we have all this stuff, so it's hard to be focused and to do something with one mind and one mind only. It's kind of a Eastern philosophy, I guess, but it's to not do things with many minds. To do it with one mind is a very difficult thing, even though it's a simple thing to do. But yeah, I'll introduce Eric Vigner, and Eric will talk about this process and his attraction to Koltes, and then we'll field questions afterwards. And if we have time, there are some slides of previous productions of Koltes' work, and we can view those as well.
I will try to speak because I apologize by advance for my bad English. I just want to say that I am very, very happy to be here and to work with these two guys. And I am very admirative of the work of Seven Stages with Faye and Dale for all these years, and to maintain this direction, this way, this path. It's not so easy. So as a director of theater too, I am very proud to share this experience with the Seven Stages as a director of CDDB, Théâtre de l'Orient, Centre Dramatique National. And we'll co-produce the play together. So, and Del said it's a long story now, because it's about 10 years, I think, maybe 10 years. The first time I was here, it was in 1998, maybe, to see the production of Black Battles with Dogs with Arthur, and Arthur was associated as a director, a young director, because it was his second direction, Black Battles, very successful one, and I love it. I love it really, and we decided with my sister, because I work with my sister, to invite the play in English in Lorient for the first time. So I think it was the beginning of a story with these two theaters too. So I am very proud to do this play in particular, because this play is the main play for me of Koltes. He wrote it 3 years before dying by AIDS, and it's a very it's very difficult to explain. it's very abstract. It's in a no man's land. It's between two men, a black man and a white man, and it's a question of deal. But there is a dealer and a client, but all the kinds of deal, love, drugs, commercial things, we don't know exactly, but it's about death, it's about love, it's about how to be together or not to be together. It's about the end of the world, maybe the beginning of another one. And it's very emotional, really. Patrice Chéreau tried to do this play 3 times. And nobody in France has done it after Patrice Chéreau, because it's very, very difficult. So we are very impressionate. It's impressive to to be in contact with this text and to work with it. So it's a premiere in United States. It's wonderful. What can I say? But the work, maybe no. I am very respectful. I respect very much the writers. I don't want to put my ideas or my vision on the text, but I want to reveal the text, to give the text to the audience. So I am very close in my work with the words, with the meaning, and which is writing, and I don't like interpretations. I think Isma'il tried to define my work, but it's very simple, in fact, and very difficult too. It's to be in the briefing and the body of the author writing. So for me, an actor has to do this. So he has to be very humble. Yes?
Yes.
He has to do this with a lot of humility, with no arrogance. So I think it's a new way, because which it's a work together. So I am not only the director. Every day I learn from them about the US culture. I didn't know. It's the first time I work in United States, even if I present a French play in Kennedy Center in Washington a few years ago. But it's the first time we are working together and we are sharing our culture, mine and their. So every day it's a new adventure. It's very amazing for me, and it's very hard work too. But I think we'll succeed at the end.
Well, one of the things that the Associated Press asked when they were doing an interview about this is, since nobody knows anything about Koltes in the U.S., how do I know that he's admired or respected at all in Europe? I mean, we're just taking your word for it, aren't we? And I said, well, yes, you are. But so it made me realize that for journalists in our country, we need to provide a list of successes so that they can point to that with their fingers and say, see, I know a lot. So we're compiling that proof of success thing that apparently is needed, even as we sit here now. But something that Eric just said has really struck me about our approach and about the whole Koltes Project too. And he was describing this new approach to make theater. I mean, I think it is the new approach of how we're doing this particular production, and as I tried to describe it. But I think it also relates to this need to have proof of success in Europe, because in a way what we have to do is explain to our colleagues in this country that in addition to psychological naturalism, there is another kind of theater. And it's well represented through the writing of Koltes. So psychological realism means it's like the method style of acting. It's like all films are done. It's like nearly all theater is done, where you have a story and the actors tell the story and pretend that the audience isn't there, and the audience pretends that the actors pretending that they're not there is somehow real. And there is this proscenium arch, as we call it. Some people would call it a psychic barrier. And the kind of theater the Koltes advocates breaks down that barrier. And it's done through text. And that's why this translation project is so important, because it implies that text is somehow primary. That's why it's important that we get people from France who have studied Koltes and who have an appreciation for Koltes to work with us to develop the translation. But Eric was saying that it's his responsibility as a director not to interpret the text, but to reveal it. And I think that's kind of like at the key to understanding what is the possibility for theater that is not psychological based, that it's a matter not of creating a concept for the production or interpreting the playwright's intention. It's not that so much as it is going in with an open mind each day and trying to find out what it's about in the moment of working with other people in the process of making theater. And so this external approach to acting that we've heard about and probably have had some experience with is the only way really that it's possible to do Koltes, because I think it would be a colossal waste of our time if we tried to sit down and understand the motivations of the people that we're playing on stage. So that flies in the face of most of theater in this country, as many of you know. So maybe either one of you would have a comment to make about about text, about the words on the page, and how do we discover the meanings of them, of these texts. We know that every word has two possible meanings or understandings. One is intellectual meaning or denotation, and the other is an emotional meaning of the word, which we call connotation. So every word has both an intellectual and a subjective or emotional meaning as well. But beyond that sort of basic knowledge about how all words exist together in phrases, maybe Isma'il, maybe you could start, because I'm sure you have the phrases of Koltes on your mind a lot.
Yes, especially as we're learning the lines. Francois said something funny to me. He's been accused of hoarding the Koltes work and only allowing certain people to do it. And so these people who have accused him have also said, well, he doesn't speak English that well, so how can he understand if the translation is good or not? And Francois fired back angrily. It's just like, I don't need to, and it's what Eric says, I don't need to, it's in the sound. So I can tell, no matter what language, if it's in Japanese or you know, if it's in Russian or if it's in English. I can hear from the very first few words. And so the very first few words of the play, this really sticks with me. It's this thing of if you walk outside. And there's another translation that says, if you're out walking. But those are two different things. And if you're out walking, it can only be about walking now. And so now we start off a play talking about a guy out walking or a person out walking. But if you walk outside, it's something different, because now it's wide open. And what am I walking outside of? And to me, the very first thing that struck me was walking outside of myself, walking outside of even how Koltes gives us instructions in a way, and it's very sly, but he gives us instructions even how to approach the work. You're going to have to walk outside of yourself. You're going to have to leave yourself, leave your, judgment, or leave your assumptions, and approach it in a different way. And it can't just be intellectual, or it has to be something in here, something weird, some beautiful human thing that Koltes writes about. And so, yeah, but it's also the music. If you walk outside at this hour and in this place, it's this thing is zoom, zoom, zoom. So it's like even the language itself becomes a desire. It's like you can't, if we do it correctly, and I think we will once we find our way through it. But if Del and I do our job, if we all do our job, then the person should be devastated leaving the audience, because to me, or leaving the play, because Koltes is calling us to be human, to return to our humanity, And I'm not saying that I'm the grand model of that, I'm as lost as anyone else. I'm lost. I'm lost in the wilderness. But Koltes says, no, but you can, if you just open up, if you just allow yourself for a little bit.
Well, Eric, I have a question for you, sir.
For me?
Yeah. I'll ask you the question, and then I'll speak for a moment while you think about the answer. And this is because it happened in rehearsal. When Eric was here some months ago, he came and we spent a week together reading through the text at that time. And he said, I want to create something beautiful. He didn't talk about his production ideas. And being an artistic director who's been on the receiving end of all kinds of crackpot ideas, as well as really thoroughly thought out ones, it was really phenomenal for me to sit with a director who would say, I want to make something beautiful. So my question for you, Eric, is what is beauty?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and of course that doesn't have an answer, and it involves aesthetics and personal choice and all that kind of stuff too. But I think a person who's trying to make something beautiful that another person would call theater should be able to answer a question like that, even in another language. And so I'm stalling now to give him time to think of some phrases in response. And I hope I didn't put you on the spot too much for that.
I can try, maybe. I think it's to find the truth. When you find the truth, when you are completely right with the moment, with the feeling of the world, with the feeling of your body, of your partner, of the audience, of space, there is a kind of beauty. It's beauty for me. It's when you are right with the world, with the energy of the world, with the moment. That's all. It's enough. It's not aestheticism. The beauty is to be here and to speak. That's all. And to be looked, to be heard, to be maybe understood. I don't know. It doesn't mind. So we are doing theater, so we are living together for a moment. That's all.
Yeah. And so I guess that revealing the text really means looking for beauty in the language, and it's right there in the room with us is what I am learning about working with Eric, as beauty or whatever that word is, it has to do with trying to figure out the best way to say an idea so that the truth of it comes clear to those of us at the table, and therefore ultimately to the audience that experiences the way that word is said or the way that moment is staged or done, I suppose. So, Isma'il, beauty?
Yeah, I mean, for me, maybe it's as everything always relates to Koltes for me these days. It's I don't know, some shared humanity, or maybe shared creation, something that's without the bullshit. Something true happens between people. No pretense, just something pure, simple. But I don't know, universal, astounding, galactic. But when it's pure. Like, it's funny, I watch my daughter and I watch her roll around the house, and there's so much wonder. Maybe that's beauty to me. It's having wonder, being curious, especially as us as adults in this modern world. Just being, I don't know, being in a state of not knowing, not judging, existing in the moment, living things, and even, in spite of your fear. Yeah, in spite of the fear, to live something, to have some pure, beautiful interaction with another human being. We don't. I think in a way this is what, I don't know, Koltes, I think Bernard-Marie searched for this himself. Something pure, something higher, to be elevated, to feel something, to be alive, to feel alive. Truly, instead of just, I don't know, mediocre, mundane bullshit we do every day. I want to be alive.
Well, in this play we're working on now, it's basically two people who are in their own worlds, their own universes. See if this sounds familiar. And one moves like this in straight lines, and the other sort of blocks his path whenever possible. That's one metaphor that you can think about this play. But the idea is that there's a point where these two worlds collide, or they overlap or something. You know, I described that I can see you in the distance, and I can't quite make out who you are in the perspective, but then you get closer to me and I realize who you are, and then I want to be with you and I want to spend more time with you. And so the experience of him walking toward me and me understanding that is beautiful in a way, because our worlds are intersecting, we're colliding with one another, or we're dovetailing or meshing or something. And not only two people, but more than two people in all of these worlds that are always isolated and solitary because we're all alone. Every now and then they can come together, and there we find beauty. So that's really been something that I've discovered, particularly about this process, that has been especially wonderful for me. So I think maybe we have said enough for you. As Isma'il mentioned, we do have some slides of Koltes productions. I guess we could show them, and Eric or Isma'il could say what it's from, and these are really wonderful photos. And then we also could read some of the text, but that seems a little weird in this situation right here, as I guess you can imagine that. But if there's a popular demand for it, I suppose we could do that. And then Isma'il also has a French film about Koltes, but it is in French, and so it would have the effect of putting non-French speakers to sleep, and so maybe it's not a good idea to show that. But for those of you who are interested, we're going to try to make subtitles and have that available at some point as part of this project.
What we'll probably do is forego the viewing of the DVD, because what I would like to do is to speak with you. I would like to hear what you have to say and your thoughts and impressions of what you've heard from us today. But if we just take a quick moment to look at the slides of the previous productions of of Bernard-Marie Koltes, that would be great.
How do we do that? Hello, Mr. or Ms. Slide Person. Are you with us? No.
Yes, she's.
Hello.
This is this has to be the Cheryl Komatunara edition. Yeah. This is Black Battles with Dogs by Patrice Cheryl. And he did something marvelous in that he built this bridge that just ended abruptly. Inside, Eric, was it in a warehouse? Yeah. Oh, this is Key West. I don't know who did this. Huh? Ah, okay. It's in the Solitude. I believe this is in the Solitude, a production of In the Solitude. Maybe it's Key West. It's Key West, isn't it? Is it Key West? Yeah. Another one. Is that Isaac? French? It may be Canadian. No, maybe it's French, because I think that's Isaac Bengali. Yes, some of them are French. There's a couple that are. All these are French productions, French language productions. Yes. This is Return to the Desert.
Return to the Desert. Théâtre du Rond-Point à Paris, Champs-Élysées.
Oh, wow.
Last production of Patrice Chéreau. And the last production Bernard-Marie Koltes saw this production after he died.
This was the last production. This is Return to the Desert, and this is the last production in Paris that Bernard-Marie saw before he died. This is directed by Patrice Chéreau.
And he was very impressed, Bernard-Marie Koltes, by this actress. She was very, very famous. She was an actress. She came from the boulevard, entertainment theater. Mm-hmm. And he was completely impressed by her. She was wonderful, comic one. She did this kind of theater all his life. And he wrote the play for her. And it was the first time she was in the state theater, national theater, for her.
I didn't know that.
What?
I didn't know that. She was from Boulevard.
Ah oui, she is completely from Boulevard.
This is a production of Roberto Zucco. Koltes' play about a serial killer, or a killer.
I think it's Le Retour au désert.
Yeah. Return to the Desert. This is Roberto Zucco.
And the solitude,
Definitely.
in the solitude of cotton fields.
The guy in the black and red shirt is Patrice Charot, and the guy in the foreground is Pascal Gregory. I met Pascal, and we met Charot as well, but we met Pascal in a cafe with Arthur one night. He's a great guy. Solitude again. As you can see, it's always something very simple. Gorgeous. I return to the desert. Roberto Zucco. Yeah. Okay. So if we could just take some questions from you all, if you have questions about anything. I also have some, I may have made just enough copies for everyone here. Information about Koltes and his work, his life, a handout to give to everyone so they have something to take away with them. If we take questions now, that would be great.
And if you do have a question, if you could wait to the mic as we are recording, and we'd just like to get all the questions in there too.
Yeah, for both Del and Eric, the two cultures, American and French culture, your understanding, you said, is somewhat limited about American culture, but I think you know a lot more about American culture, Eric, than you're willing to admit. I'll keep asking the question until you guys get ready. Yeah, right. I'll give you time to think of an answer. But if you could describe and discuss a little bit about, are Americans ready for this? Do Americans need this? Do they need to be introduced to Koltes? Is it going to help Americans with their understanding of the world? Give me some ideas about those sort of things. Does that make sense?
Me? Well, I think that America needs theater. I believe it's essential for our culture, and that it's not peripheral and on the outside. I believe that theater is expansive enough that it includes many different kinds of theater. And David Mamet just proclaimed himself a neocon, a right-winger. He's no longer a liberal. So there must be playwrights who don't have a concept of themselves that is political in that way. And these kinds of playwrights, like Bernard-Marie Koltes is, come into our universe, and it's not that we need to have them here or that the world would not survive if we didn't have a knowledge of them that was beginning to permeate the culture. But a writer who is absorbed with the energy of something beautiful, as we were discussing it earlier, a writer who understands what language means to the culture, this is something that we lack in our country. We don't have writers that want to write in poetry because it doesn't lead to films. We don't have writers that are interested in complex ideas because producers aren't interested in that. And so in the country, there are only a handful of agents that are even interested in writers of substance. And so I think introducing one of the most important writers in the world into our country is something that ought to be embraced and easily welcomed, not because it's going to create some sort of weird competition in the capitalist world, because it's certainly not going to do that, but because the energy that goes into, the personal and dynamic energy that goes into working on a play like this is more profound and different than working on plays that we have done before, or plays that are interesting but are like plays that we've done before. So this is really very different. The places in the country where Koltes has been done have had great response from it. It requires a different kind of audience than we have too. And so it brings up the question of, do the theaters in our country have the courage to find a new audience? And that, of course, is one of the questions that we're struggling with or without Koltes. And I think the answer to that's yes, because Susan Booth is a perfect example. Here's one of the country's leading directors, and she's got a lot of courage. Yet she's doing plays that have popular appeal as well. So I think as long as the doors aren't closed, people like Koltes will be welcome and will have an influence on the culture. What will be the result of that influence, we won't know until we read the words on the page.
Oh, did Eric want to respond on that?
What is the question?
The question basically is, from the French point of view, from the French culture, how do you feel about introducing Koltes to the American culture and being part of that, and how important is that? The way he thinks, the way he writes.
I think he is the most important author and the second part of the 19th century in Europe. Because, as Del said, it's new, it's completely open. There is no criticism, especially in this play. So it's not political only, it's not psychological, ideological. It's poetic. It's for the audience, you know. It's for the audience. Each people in the audience is a word, and each people can find a solution, a way, a story about what is proposed on stage. So it's a theater to invent my own life, or to invent my own story, that's all. And it's very, very important to think the thing like this. Because it's a new world, it's a new way to give some energy to work for the future. And it's not only to be alive, for me, because it's to be alive when you know at each moment that you will die. So you enjoy completely the life. It's a new theater, but it's not completely theater. In fact, this play in particular, it's most literary. It's not. It's like Conrad for you. It's like the great American authors too. So it's very important to discover this author, and I support completely the work of Isma'il for the translations, because it's very good work. really. So I hope, yes, maybe in 10 years, Koltes will represent for some American people something. Probably, I am sure, because we have to begin something. In France, it's the same too. When an offer is arriving from another country, it needs times. It need times, energy, conviction, passion, work, time to defend him.
My question is, I guess you can't compare Genet and Koltes, but Genet has had such a huge impact on theater in the United States. And do you think Koltes will have a similar impact, or why do you think that Koltes in his lifetime had less of an impact here than Genet did when he was writing?
That would be Jean Genet, yeah? You know, I'm racking my brain about this theater history question here, and Jean Genet was not well regarded in the U.S. largely because of his homosexuality and his proclaimed advocacy for radical causes in his own country, and the fact that he was in jail a lot because of his beliefs. And so Americans have difficulty embracing a person of ill repute such as Jean Genet. And I believe that maybe his writing even today is not well understood in America. And maybe his writing is really closer to Koltes, for example, than to Sam Shepard, for example. So, you know, it's a good question, and pretty complex, too, I think. And I hope that I have inadequately responded. Do you have any thought on that? Jean Genet?
Yes, it's close. I think, yeah. It's like Jean Genet. It's not completely Jean Genet, because Jean Genet was in a period.
Dell, is there an American playwright that compares to this? I mean, I'm confused and curious and all of that. So trying to wrap my head around it. I'd love to hear some of it if you guys would do it. But is there somebody that is familiar to us that you could compare him to as a writer?
Possibly Chuck Mee. Although he tends to be much more spare in his use of words than Koltes, who tends to be very extravagant. But in terms of thinking and the perspective, especially the perspective about the other, the idea of the other and how it pervades our culture, I think maybe he would have something in common with Koltes in spirit, if not in the way it looks on the page. Maybe Mary Zimmerman, possibly. But, you know, I mean, most of the writers who have tried verse, for example, in this country, Maxwell Anderson and others, you know, they're all pretty much bad plays, and they couldn't ever find an audience for it either. I think poetry tends to be in musical comedy in our country. Somehow it gets co-opted and consumed by that particular American form of theater. But I'd be hard-pressed to, as you can tell from my answer, I'd be hard-pressed to match Koltes with another writer. I know a lot of young writers, not well known, who are writing these kinds of poetic responses to their world. I think Eric is right. They're not plays in the sense of, you know, a clear story you can follow with an arc and a climax and a denouement and all that stuff. No, these are not plays that have a dramatic structure like that. These are not plays that have action that are defined like dramatic action, like that, where there's a narrative involved and one thing leads to another. No, these are plays that are on the inner landscape of the people who are doing the performances in the moment. That's what they're intended to be. As actors in this production, I think we agree to be collaborators in the writing process. Even though the writing is done by the time we get to it, it's not finished until we do our work with it. And in that sense, the collaboration between the text on the page and the actor's understanding of it and the director's understanding of it and how it's all presented, it's a much more organic and whole process than the normal play that has the top-down structure that's required with the playwright and then interpreters of the playwright and designers and all of like that. So, but I think it is something that's new, and we are introducing something new. And you know, I think I know from my days as a water safety instructor that you can't teach a person how to do the Australian crawl unless they know how to do the doggy paddle. So you only learn based on what you know. You can't take a new idea and learn it unless it can somehow be associated with something you already know. And so we have a very broad understanding of theater in our country, and introducing a writer who is concerned with ideas and language is not that far removed. And I think, you know, we're going to be able to find a group of people that want to go down this road with us. I hope so, anyway. And Atlanta, of all places, being the unlikely location for this base, I think, why not? I mean, there was this thing, this what do you call it, civil rights movement that, of all places, occurred here. And, of course, there is the fish tank and the possibility for the Atlanta Braves that always exist. You know, all of those things are part of Atlanta. So why not Koltes? Couldn't hear that. Oh, read. Mm-hmm. Should we read?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
If you want to go outside.
If you walk outside?
Yes.
Can we take a question
It's the beginning.
before?
Yes, please.
I have a question for you,
It's
Isma'il.
around this place.
Question, Isma'il.
I have a question for you, Isma'il. I'd like to, relating back to what you said about the devastation and the fear that comes along with a lot of Koltes' work. Everyone I know who loves Koltes has this very intense, life-changing relationship to his work. And for me, the one word that always comes up is magical. And, you know, it's that magic that comes along with, you know, really seeing into this chasm that is yourself and losing yourself and finding yourself. So it's a very emotional response. And relating back to the poetry that Del was talking about, how did you deal with the challenge of translating a very lyric, very symbolic text and relating it to an American English translation of this text? I imagine that would have been very, very challenging.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, especially because I haven't mastered the language by any stretch. But I think one thing, I think I was in my first few versions of the translation was in error. And I think part of the reason it was an error is because I was doing what I think a lot of people do when translating Koltes is they try to correct it. It's an arrogant thing to do. So now I approach it, I don't approach it of trying to correct Koltes, and I don't approach it thinking I know better than Koltes. I try my best to stay as close to what he wrote, how he wrote it. So it's this great line in it that translated. It's perhaps am I whore. It's one phrase. Other translations I've seen is they always go perhaps I am a whore because just force it to make sense. But he's doing something particular by saying perhaps am I whore. I mean, you say you, or you can say je suis. It's But he said, suis-je, and so that can only be, am I? It can't be, I am, unless you force it to be, your own judgment. And it's, so I mean, if I can just follow Koltes as much as I can, and then in the production process, we work on it more and more, we work on the translation, and, but initially, yeah, if I can follow him as much as possible and not put my thing on it, forgive my language, but yeah, if I can not put my shit on it, then I think we can have something, by the time we go to rehearsal, we have something we can start to work with and refine. Otherwise, we start out with something we can't work with it.
Well, we can try to read a few brief passages just by way of explanation. If there's a structure, it is that the beginning part of the play is long speeches. There are only two actors. And as the play progresses, the speeches become shorter, so that by the end, it seems to be like dialogue, as we would define dialogue. So I have one little section here that I can read that comes later into the play, but it's probably good to hear Isma'il's reading first, whatever it is you were planning to.
If you walk outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a proposition.
So this is the very first speech of the play.
Yes.
Then.
If you walk outside at this hour and in this place, it's because you desire something you do not have. And this thing, me, I can provide it for you. As I'm at this place long before you and long after you, and at this very hour, the savage relationship between men and animals doesn't chase me away. It's because I have what's necessary to satisfy the desire that passes in front of me. And it's like a weight I need to get rid of on anyone, man or animal, who passes in front of me. This is why I am approaching you, despite it being the hour when ordinarily man and animal savagely attack each other. I am approaching you, me, open hands and palms turned towards you, with the humility that one who offers shows one who buys, with the humility that one who possesses shows toward one who desires. And I see your desire as one sees a light which ignites in the window at the top of a building at dusk. I'm approaching you as the dusk approaches that first light, gently, respectfully, almost affectionately, leaving all below in the street, animal and man, to pull on their leashes and wildly bare their teeth. Not that I've guessed what you desire, nor am I hurried to know, because the desire of a customer is the most melancholic thing. One contemplates it like a little secret that asks to be penetrated, and one takes his time before penetrating. Or like a gift that arrives all wrapped up, and one takes his time as he unties the string. But it's that I myself desire, since I am at this place, all that any man or animal may long for in this hour of darkness, and makes them leave out of their homes in spite of the wild growls of unsatisfied animals and unsatisfied men. Behold why I know, better than the anxious buyer who still keeps for a time his mystery, like a young virgin raised to be a whore, that what you'll ask of me, I have it already, and that all you need to do, without you feeling hurt by the apparent injustice that he who asks feels in front of he who offers, is to ask it of me. Since there is no true injustice on this earth other than the injustice of the earth itself, which is sterile by cold or sterile by heat and seldom fertile by the soft mixture of heat and cold, then there is no injustice for whomever walks on the same portion of earth, subjected to the same cold and the same heat and the same soft mixture, and any man or animal which can look another man or animal in the eyes as its equal because they walk on the same fine line and flat latitude, slaves of the same cold and same heat, rich the same and likewise poor. And the only border that exists is the one between the buyer and the seller, but uncertain, both possessing desire and the object of desire, at the same time hollow and full, with less injustice still than there is in being male or female among men or animals. This is why I temporarily borrow humility, and I lend you arrogance, so that one distinguishes us one from the other at this hour, which is inevitably the same for you and for me. So tell me, melancholy virgin, in this moment of softly growling men and animals, tell me the thing that you desire and I can provide it for you. And I'll provide it for you gently, almost respectfully, perhaps with affection. Then, after having filled the hollows and leveled what grows inside of us, we'll move one away from the other, balanced on the thin and flat line of our latitude, satisfied among men and animals, dissatisfied to be men and dissatisfied to be animals. But don't ask me to guess your desire. I'd be obliged to enumerate all that I possess to satisfy those who have been passing in front of me since I am here, and the time necessary for this enumeration would dry out my heart and without doubt exhaust your hope.
My passage, one of the things that we've done in rehearsal is we've developed a scene breakdown, a list of scenes by paragraph in the production. There are about 65 paragraphs I learned from this method, and each scene has a title, and this scene that I'm reading is called The Dog's Perspective. That doesn't mean anything really. The rule requires that when a man meets another man, he always ends up tapping him on the shoulder and speaks about women. The rule requires that the memory of women serves as the last resort of fatigued fighters. The rule requires this. Your rule. I won't submit myself to it. I don't want to discover our peace in the absence of women, or in the memory of an absence, or in the memory of anything. Memories disgust me, and the absent as well. As for digested food, I prefer dishes that haven't been touched. I don't want peace coming from anywhere. I don't want peace to be found. But a dog's perspective contains only the assumption that all around him is obviously dog. Thus you pretend that the world on which we are, you and I, is held on the tip of a bull's horn held by the hand of Providence. However, I know, me, that it floats, positioned on the backs of 3 whales. There's no providence or balance, but the whim of 3 idiotic monsters. Thus our worlds aren't the same, and our strangeness is mixed into our nature as grapes into wine. No. I will not raise a leg in front of you at the same place as you. I am not affected by the same gravity as you. I am not from the same female. Because it's not in the morning that I wake, and it's not in sheets that I sleep. Well, there's a sampling. Well, we'd like to thank you very much for coming today, and thanks to the Writers Lab for hosting us and for asking Isma'il to do this presentation. Those of you listening on your iPods, is that what it is? We hope you've enjoyed this. I can't imagine any listening to all this on the iPod, but I don't know, maybe you don't have much of a life out there in iPod land. I don't know. But thank you very much.
Thank you.